The Crown Haven estate had always been shrouded in mystery. Perched on a windswept hill, the grand yet dilapidated mansion loomed over the town, a relic of a forgotten era. For decades, whispers of strange events and mysterious disappearances surrounded the estate, driving away all but the bravest of souls. Local legends spoke of spirits trapped within its walls, their stories untold, and their souls restless. When a group of paranormal researchers decided to spend the night in the house to document its ghostly residents, they were prepared for a night of suspense, but nothing could prepare them for what they were about to encounter. The team arrived just before dusk. Led by Max, a seasoned investigator known for his skeptical approach, the team included Harper, an empath with a talent for sensing energy, Luke, the tech expert, and Tessa, a researcher fascinated by the mansion's grim history. As the team approached the house, Harper felt an overwhelming sense of sorrow and unease, as if the house itself was aware of their arrival. Max set up base camp in the main hall, his calm demeanor giving the team confidence. "All right, we'll split into pairs," he instructed. "Harper, you're with me. Luke and Tessa, take the west wing and see if you can pick up any EMF readings or EVP activity." The house seemed to breathe around them, its walls creaking as the last rays of sunlight faded. Harper walked through the grand, dust-covered foyer, shivering as she passed a cracked mirror. She thought she saw a shadow flicker behind her, but when she turned, there was nothing. In the west wing, Luke and Tessa found a corridor lined with portraits of the original inhabitants. Their expressions seemed frozen in anguish, their eyes lifeless yet strangely aware. Luke's EMF reader began to spike, and he held it up, scanning the area. "Something's here," Luke whispered. Just then, the temperature dropped, and Tessa felt a cold breath against her neck. Turning, she glimpsed a figure at the end of the corridor, a young girl in an old-fashioned dress, her face pale and hollow. The figure blinked, her empty eyes meeting Tessa's before vanishing into thin air. Meanwhile, in the east wing, Harper was overcome by a strong sensation, a pull toward the mansion's grand staircase. "There's something up there," she murmured, clutching her pendant as if it might protect her. Max looked at her, a mixture of curiosity and concern crossing his face. Despite his skepticism, he knew Harper's instincts were rarely wrong. Together, they ascended the staircase, each step seeming to echo with whispers. At the top, they found a door leading to a small, hidden room. Inside, the air was heavy, and a dusty, leather-bound book lay on an old writing desk. Harper felt compelled to open it. As her fingers touched the cover, a rush of images flooded her mind, images of people, of desperate faces, of cries for help. She gasped, pulling her hand back. "These people, they never left," she whispered, her voice shaking. "They're still here, trapped." Luke's voice crackled over the radio, his tone urgent. "Max, Tessa just saw an apparition, a little girl. She disappeared, but I think she wanted us to follow her." Max exchanged a glance with Harper. "All right, everyone, let's meet in the central hallway. We need to stay together from here on out." As they regrouped, the team noticed the house felt different, more alive, as if the spirits were gathering around them, aware of their intentions. Shadows flickered in the corners of their vision, and the faint sound of crying echoed from somewhere deep within the mansion. They followed the sound to a locked door at the end of a dark hallway. As Luke picked the lock, Harper felt a sudden wave of anger wash over her, a fury not her own. "There's something or someone angry behind this door," she warned, her voice tight. The door swung open, revealing a room filled with dusty belongings. Clothes, toys, and even a journal. Tessa picked up the journal, its pages yellowed and fragile, and began to read aloud. The entries described the lives of the people who had once lived here, a family, servants, and visitors who had mysteriously vanished. Suddenly, the air grew colder, and the room dimmed. The ghostly figure of a woman appeared before them, her face lined with sorrow. "Help us," she whispered, her voice like a breeze. "Who are you?" Max asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "We are those who were forgotten," she replied. "Bound here by betrayal and by secrets that have kept us from peace." Harper's eyes widened as the woman's tragic story unfolded in her mind, years of betrayal, jealousy, and a deadly fire that had sealed their fates. The woman extended a translucent hand, gesturing toward the journal. "Finish the story, reveal the truth, and we may be free," she whispered, her form fading into a shadow. Determined, Tessa flipped to the final entry. It told of a betrayal by a trusted friend, someone who had taken everything from the family in life and condemned them to remain bound to Crown Haven in death. The journal ended abruptly, but Tessa sensed they were on the brink of uncovering a truth that had remained hidden for centuries. Suddenly, the walls seemed to pulse with energy, as if the house was fighting against them. Harper felt the spirit's fear and desperation. She could hear their whispers urging her to keep going, to free them from the bonds that kept them there. "We need to find the source of this curse," Max said, his voice resolute. "Some relic, some piece of the past, must be keeping them here." They searched the room and found a small, ornate box tucked into a drawer. Inside was a key and a torn piece of paper with a name on it, the name of the person responsible for the betrayal. The air crackled as Harper realized that they held the final piece of the puzzle. With a sense of purpose, she pressed the key into the lock of the box. As the box opened, a rush of cold air swept through the room, and the spirits appeared around them, faces relieved but wary. The woman from before stepped forward, her face softening with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, a tear slipping down her translucent cheek. "We are free." With that, the spirits slowly faded, the sorrow lifting from their faces. A warmth filled the room as sunlight broke through the mansion's dusty windows for the first time in decades. The house now stood silent and at peace, a weight lifted. The team exchanged looks of awe and relief, feeling the presence of the souls they had set free. As they left Crown Haven, Harper looked back, feeling a gentle peace settle over her. The mansion, once a house of sorrow and secrets, was now simply an old, quiet home, a place where spirits had finally found rest. And as they walked away, they felt certain that the ghosts of Crown Haven would linger no more, their secrets finally laid to rest. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story. As the team turned to leave, an eerie calm settled over Crown Haven. Yet, as they reached the front steps, Harper felt a prickle of energy, something she couldn't ignore. She stopped, glancing back at the mansion's towering frame, and a shiver rippled through her. "What is it?" Max asked, noticing her hesitation. "It doesn't feel finished," Harper replied slowly. The others exchanged glances, the unease building once more. "You think there's something we missed?" Luke asked, fidgeting with his equipment as if searching for an excuse to stay outside. The night had left them all exhausted, but Harper's instincts were rarely wrong. "Just one more check," she murmured, her voice almost pleading. Harper was drawn to a smaller, unmarked door off the main hallway, a door they hadn't explored. Reluctantly, the team followed Harper back into the mansion, a reluctant chill settling over them. The air grew heavier with every step, as though the house was alive, holding its breath. Pushing open the door, they found a narrow staircase leading downward, spiraling into the darkness beneath the mansion. It was a cellar, perhaps even an old servant's quarters. With only the glow of their flashlights illuminating the way, they descended carefully, the walls damp and lined with mold. At the bottom, the space opened up to a vast, stone-lined cellar, filled with artifacts and furniture that looked untouched by time. The air was stifling, and Harper's breath grew short, her mind racing with emotions that felt like they weren't her own: anxiety, panic, and a strange, quiet fear. In the center of the room, they found a set of iron chains bolted to the floor. Harper knelt down, sensing a wave of anger and sadness emanating from the spot. "Someone was kept here," she whispered, her fingers grazing the rusted metal links. "That explains the stories of disappearances," Tessa said, her voice shaking. "People didn't just vanish, they were taken here, kept prisoner." Max shone his flashlight over the chains, revealing scratches on the stone floor, marks that seemed to tell a story of struggle and despair. The realization hit them. This wasn't just a place where spirits were bound by misfortune, this was a prison. A place where dark deeds had taken root. As they scanned the room, Harper noticed an old, worn journal half buried in dust. She picked it up, her fingers brushing over the cover. Opening it, she found that it was filled with handwritten notes, cryptic entries, fragmented thoughts, and disturbing confessions from someone who had once lived in Crown Haven. One entry caught her attention, dated decades before. "They're all mine now. Their lives, their wills, I hold them here, and they will never escape. The house listens, and it obeys." Whoever wrote this was responsible for keeping people here, Harper said, her voice laced with horror. It's as if the house itself is complicit. The energy in the room grew denser, and an unnatural chill crept into their bones. Just then, the cellar door creaked shut above them. The team turned, the beam of their flashlights illuminating the narrow staircase that was now empty. They were alone. "Did you hear that?" Luke whispered, fear evident in his eyes. Max moved to the base of the stairs and tried the door, but it wouldn't budge. A cold realization settled over them. They were locked in. "This has to be the spirit's doing," Max said, but his voice wavered, the skeptical certainty he once held beginning to crack. They tried to force the door open, but it was as if an invisible force held it shut, refusing to let them go. Harper felt a presence growing stronger around them, a dark energy filling the room. Shadows flickered at the edges of their vision, shifting in shapes that looked almost human. One by one, faint apparitions appeared, their faces gaunt and eyes empty, staring at the team with a chilling intensity. "Why won't you let us go?" Harper pleaded, feeling their pain as though it were her own. The figures did not speak but only pointed to the chains on the floor, their eyes hollow with despair. Harper understood then these were the souls of those who had been bound to the house, imprisoned and forgotten. Their suffering had been twisted into the very foundation of Crown Haven, their spirits fed upon by whatever dark entity held sway over the mansion. "We're not here to hurt you," Tessa spoke softly, her voice carrying the kind of compassion that only true believers in the paranormal could understand. "We want to help you, to set you free." One of the spirits, a young woman in tattered clothes with tear-stained cheeks, stepped forward. Her gaze was fixed on the journal Harper held, her translucent hand reaching out as if drawn to it. Harper felt compelled to open it to a particular page, where another ominous entry awaited them. "When the truth is discovered, the house will be mine no longer. But none will survive to speak of it." "What does that mean?" Harper whispered, dread pooling in her stomach. Max's face was pale. "It means we're in the middle of whatever curse was cast here, and it's not going to let us go." Just then, a low, guttural voice reverberated through the room, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. "You think you can leave now that you've uncovered my secret?" The walls seemed to breathe, a dark, pulsing energy filling the cellar as the shadows grew darker, more defined. The guttural voice sent chills through their bones, echoing in a way that felt almost tangible, like a shiver that crawled up their spines. Harper clutched the journal close, her heart pounding as the walls seemed to press inward, trapping them in a tightening grip of darkness. A cold wind swept through the cellar, extinguishing their flashlights in an instant. The room plunged into total blackness, and the air turned stifling, thick with a malevolence that felt almost sentient. Tessa fumbled with her flashlight, but each time she flicked it on, it would flash briefly before dying out again, as if the darkness itself was swallowing the light. "We need to keep calm," Max whispered, though even he struggled to mask the fear in his voice. "This entity, it doesn't want us to leave. But maybe if we can communicate." A hollow laugh echoed around them, freezing them in place. "Communicate?" The voice sneered, its tone dripping with mockery. "You've already done enough. You've stirred things best left forgotten." Suddenly, the walls began to throb with a deep, rhythmic pulse, as if the mansion itself had a heartbeat. With each pulse, a chorus of ghostly whispers filled the room, voices overlapping in a cacophony of desperation and fury. Harper clamped her hands over her ears, but the voices burrowed into her mind, filling her thoughts with scenes of anguish. In one fleeting vision, She saw the chains, new and blood-stained, holding captives who pleaded to the darkness, their cries swallowed by the oppressive shadows. "Look!" Luke shouted, his trembling finger pointing at the far wall, where the shadows coalesced into a figure, a tall, imposing man in a coat from another century, his eyes black and soulless. His presence exuded an unnatural authority, his gaze cold and penetrating. It was clear he was the one responsible for the mansion's dark past, the puppeteer holding the spirits within his grasp. "You should never have come here," he intoned, his voice a low rumble that resonated through the cellar. He stepped forward, his figure rippling like smoke, growing larger as he approached. "The house is mine, and so are you." Harper's breath hitched as she felt the entity's gaze settle on her, as if he knew she was the key to unlocking the truth. Clutching the journal, she held it up in defiance, her voice trembling but determined. "We know what you did," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You used this place as a prison, feeding on the lives of those who wandered in. But we won't let you keep them here any longer." The entity laughed, a hollow, echoing sound. "Bold words, but you know nothing of what binds me here. This house and I are one. Even in death, I command them all." The ghostly figures around them shifted, their faces filled with dread, their eyes imploring. The entity raised a hand, and the spirits shrank back, as if controlled by an invisible leash, their terror too overwhelming for them to resist. "Can you see?" Harper whispered to her team, voice trembling. "He's not just holding them here. He's using their pain to sustain himself." Max's jaw clenched, his mind racing. There has to be a way to sever his connection. What's in that journal? Maybe there's something, anything that gives us leverage over him. Harper flipped through the pages, scanning for clues. Her eyes landed on a passage scrawled in the margins, written in a frantic hand. "Destroy the source, break the chain." It was a clue, but a cryptic one. Harper looked around, trying to decipher what "the source" could mean. Her gaze fell upon a large, ancient-looking mirror on the far side of the room, nearly hidden by dust and debris. Its frame was ornate and covered in strange symbols that matched those in the journal. "I think it's the mirror," Harper said, her voice filled with a strange certainty. "That's where his power lies. It's like a gateway, something that connects him to this place." Without hesitating, Max grabbed an iron rod from the cellar floor and walked toward the mirror. But the entity stepped in front of him, his expression darkening with rage. The room trembled as he raised his hand, forcing Max to the ground with an invisible force. Harper rushed to Max's side, reaching for the iron rod. But just as her fingers closed around it, she felt icy hands on her shoulders, gripping her tightly. The spirits themselves seemed torn, bound to the entity's command yet drawn to Harper's resolve. They surrounded her, their ghostly forms flickering, their faces etched with both desperation and the faintest glimmer of hope. "Please," Harper whispered, her voice barely audible. "Help us stop him." The spirits hesitated, glancing between the entity and the group. With a final, agonized look, one of them, a young woman with sorrowful eyes, nodded. She placed her hand on Harper's, guiding it toward the iron rod. In a sudden, coordinated surge, the spirits released a wave of energy, pushing against the entity's hold. The shadows pulsed and writhed as if fighting against their own chains. Harper felt the energy course through her, the combined strength of the lost souls lifting her to her feet. With a determined shout, she swung the iron rod toward the mirror, just as the entity's roar filled the air. The mirror cracked, its surface fracturing like a spiderweb. As each crack spread, the entity's figure flickered, his form destabilizing, his grip on the spirits loosening. The walls shook violently, and the ground beneath them trembled as though the entire mansion was resisting the destruction of its dark anchor. The spirits cried out, their voices a mixture of joy and fear as they felt the binds breaking. But the entity's rage only grew, his figure charging toward Harper as she raised the iron rod once more. And with one final, resounding strike, the mirror shattered completely, sending shards flying across the room. The entity let out a horrific scream, his form dissolving into smoke, swirling upward and then vanishing into nothingness. For a moment, there was only silence. With the mirror shattered, the oppressive darkness lifted, and the spirits finally free gazed at the team with gratitude before slowly fading away, their anguished expressions softened by peace. The cellar lightened, the suffocating chill replaced by a gentle warmth as Crown Haven seemed to sigh in relief, its hold on the spirits released. The team emerged from the mansion, exhausted yet triumphant. As they stepped outside, Harper glanced back one last time, seeing the once shadowed windows now clear, the house standing silent and calm, as if finally at rest. In the days that followed, rumors about Crown Haven began to die down. People who ventured near felt an unusual stillness but sensed no lingering dread. The mansion had released its hold, its dark history put to rest by the courage of those who had sought the truth, allowing Crown Haven to become simply an old, forgotten relic no longer haunted, but at peace at last. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story.